Hi, I'm Megan. Welcome to today's live reading of Ghost and Baklava by Vic Azeem, presented by Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Join me. Prologue. This is a tale of ghosts, romance, and food. A tale of community and purpose, and food. Delicious, exotic food of the South Asian variety. I want to emphasize food, so you may think twice before taking this story on an empty stomach. I've tried to read books when starving. It's a hungry frustration. All right, I'll assume you've gathered a snack. Let's put food out of our minds and off to the side. A garnish that needs no attention. Let's proceed. Part 1. The Merchant and the One Who Got Away. Chapter 1. I believed in the possibility of love from the very first day I met Wava. I didn't believe in the possibility of ghosts until one reached through a laptop and choked me. Love is a little bit more natural and obvious, but it's very easy to be skeptical of the supernatural. Life is hard enough without having consideration for evil entities entering our world and causing chaos. I would have been perfectly fine living life without any of it, but something else had other plans for Rehan Mansour. Maybe I shouldn't have been skeptical at all. As a child, my parents used to make it an evening telling stories about ancient evil beings called jinns. They hadn't encountered one themselves, but they swore one had haunted their neighbors back in Pakistan. The stories were a nice break from my usual diet of video games and television shows, and my parents relished talking about their past. We made fresh mango-flavored kulfi in the kitchen and sat in the living room where my parents would drink pistachio chai and tell frightening stories. The trepidation in their voices stayed etched in my mind throughout my childhood. But I took those stories as entertainment, not a warning. They didn't carry any more weight in my brain than the cheesy horror movies I saw on television late at night. Ghosts, jinns, killer clowns from outer space. What was the difference? None of it was real, right? Of course, evil didn't merely come in the form of supernatural. Human beings could be as evil and sinister as any dark force could muster. I was 30 years old when they came for me. You may be wondering who they are. My psychology professor used to muse that context is king, which I'm going to plagiarize, both in his honor and because it's situationally appropriate. To understand they, we must start with a Tuesday in January, ripe in winter displeasure. The temperature at my cozy Rambler style house. The temperature at my cozy Rambler style house was set to 70 as I hopped out of my pillow-topped mattress and began my morning stretches. My arms jumped into the air sloppily, twisting my back into a pretzel and crackling like a rattling subwoofer. Exercise was a necessary evil, maybe the top of activities that were annoying to begin but felt great halfway through. The temperature tasted like 60 as my body struggled to work up a sweat. I grabbed my wrinkle-free dress clothes from the ironing board and headed to the bathroom. The rack above the door showcased the plush blue towel I'd won playing darts at the recent New Year's office party. I turned on the shower and felt a chill while waiting for the hot steam to invite me in. The holidays had concluded, but the cold remained. Holiday joy was now replaced with overpacked gems promising the idea of a new year meaning a new identity, and boxes of stovetop sitting lonely on grocery shelves like toys kids had outgrown. But alas, the mental wonders of January did not consume me this Tuesday. My mood was too radiant. A wide beam stretched across my face, transcending short-term pleasure and suggesting long-term fulfillment. I stayed in the shower longer than normal, as if it was an early celebration. Out of the shower, I put on a dress shirt and nodded to myself in the mirror. Rehan, you got this. Morning affirmations had become a routine as exercise. Body, mind, and spirit all needed to be aligned in a positive fashion. And the other ingredient? Bouncing, energetic music. The happy playlist on my phone jumped to Vanilla Ice, which forced a new type of stretch, a funky out-of-touch dance while reaching into the bathroom cabinet for my daily cologne. Ice in the house, I sung loudly as I held the cologne steady, ready to spray. A medium-sized bottle that informed my office aroma over the previous few months. But why settle for routine? I placed the bottle back in the cabinet and elected for a tiny gold container sitting on the left corner. 1 million by Paco. The good shit. A thoughtful purchase reserved for special occasion. And that Tuesday was special. It carried a subtitle that meant nothing for most, but everything for me. The promotion. 7 long years of extra hours and warm smiles were about to pay off. You've surely heard of the snappy young go-getter who arrives at work early and stays long after most would dash for the elevator. I was that and more. Nexus Billing was the company, and I was sweat equity in human form. Who missed the Super Bowl? Who missed the last Oasis tour? Who was the only person to have not seen Squid Games? I spent so much time at the office, it may as well have been called the Rehan Inn. I fell into it fresh out of college. My parents encouraged me to try my luck at the big office in town. I desperately wanted to get hired, but expected a clear rejection. My education was basic and my resume unqualified, hardly a standout in a large pool of candidates aiming for limited spots. Nexus Billing was the financial bread and butter of Dalebridge. For most office jobs, you had to commute to a bigger city nearby. And so the phone call informing me I was now an employee at Nexus hit me like the primary target in a dopamine balloon fight. What a high to expect nothing and get everything. The first year, I was just happy to be there, but as I got acclimated, my expectations arose. Why settle for the mundane office in Dalebridge? Nexus Billing was a national company with locations all over. I set my sights higher each year, and now in year 7, graduation day was upon me. It may seem dangerous to tie so much of one's existence into one company. Sure, I had the usual trappings of a modern 30-year-old in corporate America. I was alone, a victim of acid reflux, and bored on the weekends because I hadn't developed any hobbies. But I had a healthy 401k, medical benefits, and a singular focus on moving into senior management. Yes, my career was full speed ahead with everything else in the rear view. I walked down the creaky carpeted stairs and into the oakwood floors of my kitchen. I pulled my meal prepped lunch out of the fridge and placed it on the counter next to my work bag. It's not to say my personal sacrifices were made in vain. Every 2 years, a junior executive from the Dalebridge office was promoted to the New York headquarters. I had only visited New York once, a weekend trip when I was a kid, but I was in love with the idea of living there. Broadway shows, bright lights, New York pizza, and unlimited opportunities to move up a Nexus. What an exciting move it would be. The fierce competition for the promotion was like a corporate Hunger Games. Nobody's life was at stake, but everyone's personal life was certainly at risk. Work performance, hours logged, and networking placed a selected few in the promotion pool. The candidates were friendly with each other on the surface, but internally we were looking for strengths and flaws that differentiated each other. I had been passed up the last 2 times, but the rumors that week had me as the current leading favorite. At least that's what data entry workers standing by the office coffee machine told me. One of them was the nephew of someone in HR, so there was at least credence to his rumors. It was that, or he was using the credence to mess with everyone's minds. You never knew in the corporate world. I chose to believe that I was indeed the leading candidate, and that had me walking not on clouds, but on a whole different solar system. I looked over at my lunch, a turkey burger with no bun and a pack of Colby Jack cheese sticks. It was month 2 of being diet conscious. For most of my career, eating real food was a disturbance to my workflow. Normally, a simple candy bar from the vending machine held me over until I got home. And instead of cooking, it felt like a better use of time to have an Uber Eats order meet me at the house after work. But my energy wasn't quite right, and craving a nap at lunchtime became tiring. Sometime after Thanksgiving, I committed to change. All the pumpkin pie and potato salad were out of my system, and it was time to forge ahead. Foreign words like diet and gym suddenly became a part of my daily lexicon. Of course, the fridge had to be audited. Donuts and pastries had to go, replaced with chicken, green beans, carrots, and eggs. Vegetables weren't so bad if they were draped with salt and pepper. Chips were replaced with walnuts, raspberries instead of candy bars, and diet orange soda became carbonated heaven. It wasn't a lifetime sentence, just a temporary stay in health-crazed madness. I tossed my work bag onto my shoulder and headed outside the front door. Although New York was exciting, I would miss the house I was renting. It was my first time living alone since it was more economical in my 20s to have roommates, but the peace of solitude had been a worthy investment. After all, not everyone enjoyed vanilla ice. My neighbor Clay sat in his garden when he spotted me walking towards my car. He managed a local pizza place called Pizza Village and still tended to his garden with honorable consistency. The result was a scenic landscape, very much the highlight of our already aesthetic neighborhood. Meanwhile, the landlord sent me a notice to mow my lawn by the end of the month. It was my fault, through proxy, as the person I'd hired to manage my yard hadn't shown up in weeks. I could have canceled the contract and done everything myself, but my job took precedence. My grass felt like quicksand as I sank into it. Of course, this wouldn't be an issue at a high rise in New York. Clay called out to me, "Hey, Rehan, did you hear about the fire downtown?" Fire? The Olive Yard, you know, the Italian place on Route 15, 20 years in business, and a fire burns it down. Can you imagine? I contemplated for a moment. Putting your heart into something for a long time and having it taken away, that must be tough. Do they know how it started? I know the owner. He thinks someone broke in. So an intentional fire? The same thing happened to Panda's Palace 4 months ago. Really? Almost identical. Looks like we may have a serial arsonist on our hands. Are they robbing these places also? He shook his head. That's the strange thing. They set places on fire and leave. I scratched my chin. That has to be the dumbest criminal enterprise possible. I hope they don't come to Pizza Village. Clay looked worried as he tore a weed out of the ground. I nodded. Let's hope they catch them. Are you working today? Yes, I'm finishing up here and heading over. We are doing a new macaroni cheese pizza. That sounds absurdly tasty. I'm on this intense diet. He laughed. Diet. You know, you could shorten that word to die. Yes, well, hopefully the next slice I have will be New York pizza. You're in line for that promotion, right? You should hear the song Celebrate playing through my speakers tonight. Have yourself a good day. I hope you sell out on the macaroni pizza. You sure you don't want me to tend to your yard? I looked at my yard and cringed. Internally, thanks for the offer, but I'm going to give my guy 1 more week. Let me know. He turned back to his gardening. I hopped in my car and took a sip of coffee. The thoughts of arson faded as I settled back into anticipation of my promotion. The coffee was off. I generally used 4 Splendas, but this tasted like 3. I coughed the bitterness away and placed my coffee cup in the holder. My first cup was always on the way to work, with a second planned for when arriving at the office, and a third one at lunchtime. Coffee breath was one of those unfortunate personal sacrifices that had to be made. The keys sank into my ignition, and the smooth sound of my Lexus GS 350 roared to life. Dalebridge was a small town on the far east side of Virginia. There were historical areas, scenic landscapes, and battlefields sprinkled all throughout the state. Beautiful beaches, mountains you could drive through, and endless trails to explore for nature lovers. But Dalebridge had none of that. We had a mall where all the teenagers would walk and sip on an orange Julius while biting into a pretzel from Aunt Anne's. There was a movie theater with no surround sound and an arcade where half the games didn't work. Yes, it was an uneventful town that wasn't on anyone's itinerary when traveling through the state. I once asked my parents why they chose to live here after migrating from Pakistan. They said it was an underdeveloped area with miles of empty land and cheap housing. They were once excited by the mere opening of a Little Caesars. It was a treat for them to have $5 large pizzas every Friday night. The scarcity of food options had changed over time, and now the town's claim to fame was having the most restaurants per square foot in Virginia. Yes, it was a town ripe with foodies. It was also one of those towns where everybody knew each other's families and gossip spread wide. Why isn't Rehan married? Was a popular sentiment in the local Desi community. At least whenever I was at a community event, the topic would come up from one of the talkative aunties. I usually couldn't get out an answer before someone would chip in with advice on where to meet a nice woman. Apparently, Cheesecake Factory was the hot spot in the Desi dating world. I would normally smile and nod and thank them for the advice. My relationship with Dalebridge had become an uneven mix of comfort and resentment. It's safe to know what to expect from life. Yes, safe and boring. The same stores, restaurants, roads, and people, all playing on repeat every day. There had to be greener grass than this. I turned on an oldies radio station and Take a Picture by Filter came on. Even as a teenager, I had always preferred old music. My taste in music had frozen in time, and anything new didn't connect the same. The thought of the promotion danced in my head as I sang along to Filter. I feel like a newborn. Do you want to take my picture? I don't know what the song was about, and I didn't care. On that day, the song was about Rehan, the son of Arwa and Monsoon, becoming a member of senior management at Nexus. My parents were in Florida and couldn't be here to celebrate, but I was expecting a call from my mom sometime that day. I pulled into my office after 20 minutes of bad karaoke and noticed my usual parking spot had been filled by a motorcycle. This was especially egregious since motorcycles had their own parking lot on the other side of the building. I hummed the filter song to myself as I parked in the back of the lot. No worries, that just meant more exercise. I read an article. I read in an article everyone should walk 10,000 steps daily to stay in reasonably good shape. I thought to myself, New York invisible abs, here I come. I walked into the building through double doors and heard an unusual amount of commotion for 9:30 in the morning. The building held 400 employees, stacked amongst 5 levels, needing major renovations. I made my way to the snack shop near the elevator. At the front desk, a young man named Kyle, who I spoke to on a regular basis when getting coffee. He was about an inch shorter than me, with short black hair. He always wore a buttoned-up polo shirt. Rehan, he said, you want the usual? That'd be great. He pulled out a tall coffee cup and placed it under an espresso machine. The rich, nutty smell of fresh coffee dispensed from the machine into the cup like a mocha waterfall. How's karate going? I asked. It's going well. The 18 to 21 tournament is coming up. You ready? Yes. I like the confidence. He mixed four Splendas into the coffee along with Irish creamer. Actually, I'm not feeling great about it. Really? I'm worried about someone who's going to be at the tournament. Who? The Karate Slayer. They call him that? Yeah. What do they call you? He handed me my coffee. Karate Heart. That's not bad. I'd rather be the Slayer. Of course. You think I'm done for? Yes. What? No, I mean, he sounds tough, but he's just a kid in your age group, right? 18 to 21, yes. Well, he's just a human, right? I guess. What do you do up there, anyways? I took a sip of the coffee and nodded with pleasure. A lot of numbers, crunched and calculated for a lot of people I'll never meet. You enjoy that? I shrugged. Well, not in the way someone would enjoy a good movie, for example, but I'm good at it, and being good at something is a shortcut to making it more enjoyable. I heard a commotion behind me and turned to see a couple of women in gold outfits dancing in the lobby. What is that? I asked. Kyle looked past me at the girls. Belly dancers? Rumor has it the company hit a financial milestone this year. It's a celebration. It's true, we did very well. Workers gathered round in the lobby as the belly dancers performed in a circle. It reminded me of the Bollywood dramas that were always on in my house growing up. A man in a black hat and long red hair appeared holding a rabbit and a spatula. Is that a magician? I've never seen one in person, Kyle answered, but I think so. The hair is wild. What does he do with the spatula? Beats me. He beats you with the spatula? Good one. Well, I have to go, anyways. I'll talk to you later. I sipped the coffee as I hopped into the elevator. When I got to the fourth floor, I put my laptop on my desk and checked my email. I had an immediate appointment scheduled with the boss. The promotion. It had to be. I danced a jig in my head and stood for my desk. There were 6 others on my team, and although I was the leading candidate for the promotion, I downplayed it to them all week. Still, I held a slight hope they had planned a surprise celebration for me. I hoped they remembered I preferred brownies over cake, boxed, not homemade. A cheap meal would be justified with this promotion. I walked into the office and froze. A woman in a tan suit I didn't know sat at a desk. She introduced herself to Abigail as Abigail. Are you new here? I asked. I'm not really here. I was brought in to temporarily provide a very specific set of skills. Oh, so like Liam Neeson in Taken? She didn't smile, and her stoic facial expression made me uneasy. She asked me to sit. How's your day going? I asked. She didn't seem to hear me as she spoke. Rehan, the company has appreciated all the time and effort you've given. The nature of business is sometimes unexpected things happen as that result in unfortunate decisions. Oh, you mean like our Christmas luncheon switching from steak to pasta?